Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I am Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're here with a poem of the weekend, a patron poem, to add to our list of poetry reviews. Dalton, would you like to give a little bit of an intro here?
Certainly so. This is for Miriam Frei. Miriam Frei on the set as Princess Leia for quite a while. Very long-standing patron with us here. And we are doing Miriam's favorite poem today, The Lady of Shalott.
Yes.
Alfred Lord Tennyson.
This is the 19-verse version, not the 20-verse version, so this is the revisited poem.
Yes.
We will give a read-through and then a review.
And we're only going to do one read-through, because it's quite the lengthy poem.
Yes.
So,
The Lady of Shalott. On either side of the river lie long fields of barley and of rye that clothe the world and meet the sky, and through the field the road runs by to many-towered Camelot. And up and down the people go, gazing where the lilies blow, round an island where there below the island of Shalott. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver, through that wave that runs forever by the island in the river, flowing down to Camelot. 4 grey walls and 4 grey towers overlook a space of flowers, and the silent isle embowers the Lady of Shalott. By the margin willowed veiled, slide the heavy barges trailed, by slow horses and unhailed, the shallop filleth silken sailed, skimming down to Camelot. But who hath seen her wave her hand, or at the casement seen her stand, or is she known in all the land, the Lady of Shalott? Only reapers reaping early, in among the bearded barley, hear a song that echoes cheerly from the river winding clearly down to towered Camelot, and by the moon the reaper weary, piling sheaves in uplands airy, listening whispers 'tis the fairy Lady of Shalott. There she weaves by night and day a magic web with colors gay. She has heard the whispers say, a curse is on her if she stay to look down to Camelot. She knows not where the curse may be, and so she waveth steadily, and little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. And moving through the mirror clear that hangs before her all the year, shadows of the world appear. There she sees the highway near, winding down to Camelot. There the river eddy whirls, and there the surly village churls, and the red cloaks of market girls pass onward from Shalott. Sometimes a troop of damsels glad, an abbot on the ambling pad, sometimes a curly shepherd lad, or long-haired page in crimson clad, goes by toward Camelot, and sometimes through the mirrored blue the knights come riding two and two. She hath no loyal knight and true, the Lady of Shalott. But in her web she still delights to weave the mirror's magic sights, for often through the silent nights a funeral with plumes and lights and music went to Camelot. Or when the moon was overhead came 2 young lovers lately wed. I am half sick of shadows, said the Lady of Shalott. The bow shot from her bower eaves. He rose between the barley sheaves. The sun came dazzling through the leaves, and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold Sir Lancelot. The Red Cross knights forever kneeled to a lady in his shield that sparkled on the yellow field beside remote Shalott. The Jimmy bridle glittered free, like to some branch of stars we see, hung in the golden galaxy. The bridle bells rang merrily, as he rode down to Camelot, and from his blazon baldric slung, a mighty silver bugle hung, and as he rode, his armor rung beside remote Shalott. all in blue unclouded weather. Thick jeweled shone the saddle leather, the helmet and the helmet feather, the helmet and the helmet feather, burned like one burning flame together, as he rode down to Camelot, as often through the purple night, below the starry clusters bright, some bearded meteor, trailing light, moves over still Shalott. His broad clear brow and sunlight glowed, on burnished hooves his war horse trode, from underneath his helmet flowed his coal-black curls, as on he rode, as he rode down to Camelot. From the bank and from the river he flashed into this crystal mirror, Tiralira by the river, sang Sir Lancelot. She left the web, she left the loom, she made 3 paces through the room, and she saw the water lily bloom, she saw the helmet and the plume. She looked down to Camelot. Out flew the web and floated wide, the mirror cracked from side to side. The curse is come upon me, cried the Lady of Shalott. In the stormy east wind straining, the pale yellow woods were waning, the broad stream in his banks complaining, heavily the low sky raining over towered Camelot. Down she came and found a boat beneath a willow left afloat, and round about the prow she wrote, the Lady of Shalott. And down the river's dim expanse, like some bold seer in a trance, seeing all his own mischance, with a glassy countenance, did she look to Camelot. And at the closing of the day, she loosed the chain, and down she lay. The broad stream bore her far away, the Lady of Shalott. Lying robed in snowy white, that loosely flew left to right, the leaves upon her falling light, through the noises of the night, she floated down to Camelot. And as the boat head wound along, the willowy hills and fields among, the herd, they heard her singing her last song, the Lady of Shalott. Heard a carol mournful holy, chanted loudly, chanted lowly, till her blood was frozen slowly, and her eyes were darkened wholly, turned to towered Camelot. For ere she reached upon the tide, the first house by the waterside, singing in her song she died, the Lady of Shalott. Under tower and balcony, by garden wall and gallery, a gleaming shape she floated by, dead pale between the houses high, silent into Camelot. Out upon the wharfs they came, knight and burgher, lord and dame, and round the prow they read her name, the Lady of Shalott. Who is this and what is here? And in the lighted palace near died the sound of royal cheer, and they crossed themselves for fear. All the knights of Camelot, but Lancelot mused a little space. He said, she has a lovely face. God in his mercy lend her grace, the Lady of Shalott.
You want to read it again just to be safe?
Go ahead.
It's a lengthy poem. It's a lengthy poem, so we only will read it once. All right.
That way we get into some of the good stuff, right?
Yes. 3 good and 3 bad. As always, I'll start here. For simple language, there's a lot being said and a lot being implied here. The connection between the Lady of Shalott and the artist struggling to capture beauty in the world should impact the reader, and this is a good use of Arthurian legend, which is not something we've tackled on the channel before, so that can be good to talk about. Bad things? Or good things from you?
The rhythm here creates a very smooth poem, right? Okay. Very long, but it zooms right past, especially when you're reading it aloud. The sense of mystery in the first half of this poem is masterfully done, I think. 3, this poem is long, but there's always something to look at, which is difficult to achieve, right?
Okay. Bad things here is I have the rhyming pattern in this is exhausting. You may say it just flows right in and out. I don't like the rhyming pattern. And I've said that many times. That's just not my taste. In order to keep the pattern here, some of the lines seem forced, and some seem just completely out of place. They're just there because they're necessary for the pattern. And much like Lancelot in the end, I'm just not invested in this. Lancelot in the end just seems to come along and he's like, that's nice.
She was cute.
Good for you.
I read that a little bit differently, but
yeah.
Three bad things. One, this is very drawn out for the message it delivers. There's a lot of poetry of unrequited love that is much briefer than this. Two, the language here very much feels like it is attempting to sound Shakespearean, right? It is a simple structure, but there are words that are queer here and there.
Okay.
Three, this feels just like play with words at times, and I think that goes along with your rhyme scheme. What you didn't like about the rhyme scheme is it felt like just play with words from time to time.
Okay.
Though there's more going on there.
All right. Do you have a quote? Our favorite line?
You go ahead first, and then I'll...
I'm not going to say what page it's from, because it doesn't matter, but this is from part 2 of the poem, because they numbered it as well, another pet peeve of mine. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care hath she. Lady of Shalott.
Mine is actually on the kissing page to that.
Okay.
Sometimes a troop of damsels glad, an abbot on an ambling pad, sometimes a curly shepherd lad, or a long-haired page in crimson clad, goes by to towered Camelot, and sometimes through the mirror blue the knights come riding 2 by 2. She hath no loyal knight and true, the Lady of Shalott.
You're supposed to sing it. It's set to song.
Go ahead then.
Lady of Shalott.
Go ahead.
It goes well. It goes well. What would you like to talk about here?
This is by Alfred Lord Tennyson, right?
Okay.
This is written after the bulk of Arthurian legend, yes?
Yes.
This is fan fiction.
Oh, yes it is.
This is fan fiction.
I would say it's more a compliment to Arthurian legend, but yeah, it's fan fiction.
Yeah, because we're taking a protagonist that does not occur in Arthurian legend.
Not to my knowledge.
And throwing them in there with canonical figures.
Okay. All right.
It's fan fiction.
There you go.
There's even some romance.
There's a lot of romance in here, and
right.
I think that is the bulk of what I'd like to speak about here.
Okay.
If we want to look at this through the eyes of romance, of sexuality, of possibly the loss of one's virginity, if you would, this seems to be just littered throughout the text. When the Lady of Shalott finally leaves her little world she has, she's leaving this world to seek Lancelot. When she does this, she passes a blooming water lily. And if I have the line, she also passes the helmet and the plume. Water lily.
Yeah.
Blooming flower. Water lily being the scientific name, Nymphaeaceae, I believe it is.
Okay.
Nymphaeaceae. Nymphaeaceae. Root word nymph.
Yes.
Passing the helmet and the plume. You look me in the eye and you tell me the helmet and the plume is not a phallic symbol.
Was she passing a helmet and plume, or was she after the helmet and plume? I thought it was... Perhaps I misread that, but she was after Lancelot, right?
She's after Lancelot,
who's in his
yes.
helmet with the plume, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And she's passing the blooming of the water lily. She's leaving the bloom behind.
So this is the feminine being complemented by the masculine.
This is the blossoming flower. Obviously the helmet and plume being phallic, but she doesn't reach her goal. She dies. She never reaches this. So this possibly being the death of innocence, if you would, here. This is capturing the pictorial image of the time of preserving feminine passivity, if you would.
Okay.
So if we look at it through that sense of this is her blooming into this world, whatnot, this sexuality world here, because this is the first thing that has taken her from her world that she knew. I think there's a lot more going on here.
It seems to suggest a sexual awakening, doesn't it? Because
that's what I'm saying.
She is not passing flowers in bloom. She's passing blooming flowers.
They bloom as she passes.
Well, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they bloom as she passes.
Yes.
You can call flowers in bloom blooming.
Yes.
But you chose not to call them in bloom.
And we chose to use water lily,
yes.
which is a very sexual, scientific-based term.
Yes.
So I think there is a lot going on here from the metaphor of sexuality, the loss of virginity, etc. So that's what got me that I got from this poem here.
Yes.
I think it can also be argued that this may be the struggles of the artist. Because is the curse that she is enduring really defined?
No, and that's sort of the mystery that I talked about, because we're not really sure exactly what the poem is about for maybe the first half, right?
Okay.
Because there's this place, and there's this person. We're not introduced to Arthurian legend yet.
Yes.
We're not introduced to the innocents yet.
But if we're looking at the curse, she's weaving something.
Yeah.
Some kind of craft, I assume. But her curse is she's trying to capture the world around her, but she's only able to capture shadow. So if we look at it through that, if we look at this in the eyes of an artist, is this the artist attempting to...
You have the poem?
Yes, I do. I just closed it.
Oh, no!
There's only 500 poems in here.
I'll find out what you're talking about.
We'll find it. But if you're looking at this through the eyes of the artist, I think it's in the 600s, by the way.
Okay.
Is this well done. Is this the curse of the artist? Is this the artist trying to constantly capture the world around them? Trying to capture everything that they see, everything that we see, and give that to their audience, but only being able to capture a shadow, a remnant of what they're trying to accomplish?
See, I interpreted the shadow a bit differently.
Okay.
I interpreted the Lady of Shalott as literally the subject of the poem, right?
Okay.
I didn't see anything meta going on there. So when she talks about living in shadows, being tired of the shadow, I was looking for it. That's why I wanted the poem, but I can't find it real quick. Living in shadows, I believe, is what it was. I think what that is in reference to is a shadow is only created by a living thing. It is not the living thing, right? So when you've got this, or it doesn't have to be a living thing, because someone's going to jump in the comment section and say
shadow is created by an object.
Yeah. But it is not the object.
Correct.
She is living the observer's life, the shadow of a life,
Okay.
but not a life. And she sees Lancelot go past, and she realizes that's the life, right?
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and try and figure it out.
Okay.
Because we also mentioned, like we said earlier, the blooming flowers. When you note that something is in bloom, it is static. It is stationary.
Yes.
When you say something is blooming, you don't mention the blooming without also inferring the withering. So what this reads to me is not just a poem of loneliness, but a poem of a woman who is perhaps seeing her sexuality in its demise.
Okay.
Right. Shadows are the darkness. The darkness comes after the light.
Yes. Shadows of the former self.
Right. So we're looking at this where this is perhaps something that she sees. Got to go out there, got to do it because it's the last chance, baby.
Okay.
Got to go out there and claim.
Okay.
Got to stake a claim.
Now, could you look at this in the light of possibly we're not looking at a young Lady of Shalott, but an aging Lady of Shalott? An aging Lady of Shalott who has encapsulated herself in this shadow world of what she has left.
Yes.
And then she sees youthful, strong, young Lancelot ride by, and she realizes, like you said, this is the life, this is what I need. But she is unable to make her journey.
Right.
So I think that is, because the age is never really addressed, I think that is interesting.
But it is a lady.
It is a lady,
Right.
and Lancelot is historically known as being young, vigorous Lancelot.
He was the sexy one, right?
He was the sexy one, the
Right.
first sexy one. But I do think you're right. There is a lot to be said here about this being a poem of loneliness and solitude.
A poem of timeliness, not timelessness.
Okay.
Right? This is something that is very much happening as we watch.
Yes.
This is not something that is a static image.
Yes.
There is a lot of movement going on here. In fact, the very first line on either side of the river Lie. Lie, perhaps being stationary, but we've got the river right there.
Yes.
In fact, in that very first stanza, river, barley and rye, cloth the wold and meet the sky, the road runs by.
Do you know anything about Alfred Lord Tennyson? Or how's your history with him?
I have not read anything about him in a very long time. I know I studied him a little bit in my undergrad.
Was he a reclusive man?
I don't know.
In the event that he was a reclusive man, I'm just going to take all kinds of liberty here. Could this be a comment on how he sees the world?
Sure, absolutely. And I think even if he was not, there is an element of the writer, which
I agree wholeheartedly. And that's the whole argument with the artist there, watching the world pass by as they toil away with their curse of trying to capture what they see. But if we look at it through that light of Tennyson using this, then he's using Arthurian legend and his poem to represent himself. So he's completely removing himself from this. Alfred Lord Tennyson is not the Lady of Shalott, as much as we'd like to see it. Alfred Lord Tennyson has nothing to do with Arthurian legend. But this is still his story. So it's a good separation between the two things, but still trying to express what you're feeling through your words. Yeah. And if that's the case, that's well done by him, and I'm a genius. Carry on.
While we're speaking to issues of masculinity and femininity, I think that it is interesting that Lancelot is introduced as bold, right?
Okay.
The sun came dazzling through the leaves and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold Sir Lancelot, right? That seems to be a masculine thing, especially for this time period.
I think so.
Especially when you're looking at a feminine character which is perhaps as passive as the Lady of Shalott.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
As passive up until this point, which again goes back to the movement of the poem.
And that could be representation of the time this was written as well with the Lady of Shalott, especially if you're trying to capture a previous time, such as what Arthurian legend would be. Women were supposed to be passive. That was considered the trait of the feminine. So the Lady of Shalott, we may see her now as being lonely and isolated. Maybe this is a great thing, is what she's doing, because as she is passive, she is doing what she was expected to be doing as a woman at the time. She is working her craft. She is spending her time invested in the craft. Is this saying the Lady of Shalott at this time is reaching out? She's pushing past that feminine passivity, empowering herself, and leaving. She's busting free from this curse.
Well, I think it's also, as much as it is that, it's a commentary on, is it better to have tried and failed than to have sat back and watched it all walk by?
Okay.
Right? And I think that, especially as life goes on, I'm coming to terms with the fact that, I think it's better to go out and try something and end up a failure than it is to pursue the average person's life, right?
I have a whole list of things we can try together. I've been waiting for you to say this for years.
But I don't know what I mean, but not that there's anything bad about the average life, but if you have something that you think is worth pursuing, why not fail at it?
True. Very true.
Isn't it better to try and fail than to sit back and say, well, maybe I could have at one point done something about this and never quite got there, but boy, the good old days.
Hey, now, we've been failing every Monday for what, 10 months? This is all right. But no, that is great. That is a good message to take from this, is to get out there and take risks and not be afraid to fail at things. So I can get along with that. Right. Anything else you'd like to say about the Lady of Shalott?
What did you have?
That's what I've got. I've come to my two things. I want to talk about the artist. I want to talk about sexuality in Lady of Shalott.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the observer.
Okay.
Because if there is anything meta going on here, it's the fact that the Lady of Shalott is removed and watching.
Okay.
Whereas we, the reader, are removed from that and watching.
Okay.
Which means that the author was removed and watching.
Okay.
Right? So I think that there are things, for all of that removedness in this piece, there's a lot of motion, which motion tends to, and action. Motion and action tend to make us forget about filtering, right?
Okay.
When you get into writing, if I wanted to say something, if I had a protagonist who got knocked in the head, my protagonist, Dalton, catches a right hook from Adrian. And if in my text I write, Dalton felt the world spinning before he hit the ground, that is bad writing because it is one layer removed.
Yes.
Right? Even if I'm writing in third person, it is better to say, the world spun before Dalton felt the ground.
Yes.
Because when you filter things, that little bit of removal is another filter with which the reader over which the reader has to hop, right, to get into the text. And despite the fact that there's so much removed here, we have so much motion, so much action going on, bit by bit and parcel by parcel, through a very long poem. But like I said earlier, we've always got something to watch. We've always got something to look at. There's always something moving. We've always got something to play with thematically. We've always got something to play with on a word choice level. There's always rhyme going on. So I think that this is a very complex poem, and it is hard to get into the complexities of this poem in a 25-minute review.
Agreed. What would you rate The Lady of Shalott?
I would give this 90 golden galaxies out of 100. What about you?
90.
90.
90.
90.
No. No, this is worth 80. Blossoming Water Lilies.
Why is this worth 80 versus 90?
This is 80.
Why is this worth 80
because
versus 90?
I say...
Okay, so if you're going to have the reaction like that and not be able to back it up, there's a disconnect somewhere.
No, there's not a disconnect.
Because
I did not
if you
enjoy
want
this.
if you want to judge me for my rating, you have to be able to back up yours.
I spend my entire life judging you with no backup. That's what I do.
And you're going to get called out for it.
Fair enough. What would you recommend with this?
That is interesting, because if you enjoyed this character, read Emily Dickinson.
Okay, yeah.
If you enjoy... If this is the place you like to play, then read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Okay.
Which is Arthurian legend,
yes.
right? So I think that there's many recommendations that could come out of a piece like this.
Okay. I actually took a different approach to it, saying if you enjoy this... and you like poems along these same lines that are familiar or that are similar, How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways, Elizabeth Barrett Browning.
Okay.
I think very similar thematically and not thematically, structural.
Okay.
So if you like this, make sure you hit the like button down below and the subscribe button as well. We appreciate that.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter, @StripCover, on Facebook, @StripCoverlit, and if you would like to join the ranks of our patron like Miriam Frei did, there is a link in the description below.